And good evening. I'm Sam Brock in for Gadi Schwartz tonight. An Israeli airstrike on a refugee camp in Gaza has killed many people. How many is unclear, and completely wiped out part of the Jabalia neighborhood where that camp is located. Now, the Israeli military says today's strikes hit Hamas militants, including a commander who the IDF claims helped to stage the October 7th slaughter that killed some 1,400 Israelis. But Hamas fighters say none of its leadership was in Jabalia at the time of the strike. You're looking at images of it right now. NBC News has yet to independently verify the commander's death, while the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, along with the director of a nearby hospital, says the strikes killed hundreds. The woman there saying, "To God we belong and shall return. God, give me patience." The Jabalia refugee camp is said to be the largest on the Gaza Strip, and it sits just north of Gaza City. Palestinians have taken refuge there since the 40s, when Israel was formed. While Israeli forces continue to pound Gaza from the air, they are also right now simultaneously pushing deeper into the enclave with a ground assault, where hundreds of Israeli military vehicles are moving closer to Gaza City. More than 8,500 people have been killed in Gaza, many of them children. That is according to the health ministry there. There is also a report tonight that for the first time, the Rafa crossing between Gaza and Egypt may open tomorrow for a number of wounded civilians to leave. We'll have more on that topic in just a moment. But right now, let's bring in NBC's Ellison Barber, who is on the ground from the Israel-Gaza border. Ellison, I know you've been witnessing a lot of activity there in recent minutes and hours. What can you tell us about this strike at the Jabalia refugee camp and this Hamas target?
Yeah, so this strike happened a little over 7 hours ago, but we're still collecting information to try to get a sense of the total toll this may have had on the civilian population in that area. So there were large numbers of explosions in this refugee site. There's video that teams on the ground, people have sent our teams outside of Gaza, just tons of video coming in showing people desperately searching through the rubble, trying to find survivors, pulling out bodies, wrapping them in blankets and lining them up. We have heard from a number of doctors at hospitals in northern Gaza. The most recent information we had was from the director of the Indonesian hospital. He said that he believes at least 50 people died in this strike, and there are about 400 that are dead and injured in all. But those numbers, they can change as we are getting more information here. This is what Israel is saying right now. They say that they did carry out airstrikes on this area, on Jabalia refugee area. They say that they were targeting a Hamas commander by the name of Ibrahim Biari and also a number of other Hamas militants. They'd said at one point that they thought they'd killed approximately 50 Hamas militants, as well as this Hamas commander, who they say was a key part in orchestrating the terror attacks on October 7th. And they also say he was a key figure leading Hamas's ground efforts inside of northern Gaza right now. They are claiming that at the time they carried out these strikes, Ibrahim Biari was organizing and targeting and laying out different plans, directing militants in northern Gaza, and that's why they had to do that strike at that time. They say that Israeli fighter jets targeted Hamas's underground infrastructure, what Israel describes as terror tunnels that were underneath this area where a lot of civilians were. Israel says they are aware of reports that civilians may have died in this. They say they don't have any numbers that they consider to be legitimate or verifiable at this point, but they are saying that they were targeting Hamas militants, and that their fighter jets struck underground where those Hamas militants were operating out of, that the tunnels they were in, which they say they were hiding in, then collapsed, and they believe multiple buildings around it collapsed with it. But they are blaming Hamas for any deaths of civilians in this strike. They are saying that Hamas is the one that chose to operate underground and put their civilians at risk. But Sam, look, the reality of any war is that there are international laws that have to be followed, and they apply to all parties. They were ratified by 196 states in the Geneva Convention, and among those rules, it says that all warring parties are required to try and limit the toll on civilians, and they have an obligation to protect civilians. One thing we have heard the U.S. say, as Secretary of State Antony Blinken and others have come to Israel, is that Israel is supposed to be different than Hamas. Hamas, they say, is a terrorist organization. Israel is a democracy. So while allies like the United States have been adamant in saying they think Israel has a right to defend itself after the terror attacks on October 7th. They also, in at least the U.S.'s view, from what we have heard them say, have an even bigger obligation to follow international laws of war. The question tonight is, are they doing that? Was there more that they could have done to try and limit the toll on civilians? And when IDF commanders have been asked that in interviews since this took place, they aren't giving a clear answer other than saying two things. One, they say Hamas is responsible for its people. Hamas shouldn't be operating where civilians are, and that they have told civilians to flee south. But the reality is, Sam, it's incredibly difficult for so many people to find safety in Gaza. And we hear from so many Gazans time and time again, they feel like nowhere is safe inside of Gaza. Sam?
And just looking at those images, Allison, the brutality of the circumstances is obvious. There's just this cavernous hole that we've been seeing, buildings that are collapsed. I do want to play for you some sound from Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday before today's events. He talked about civilian deaths. Take a listen.
Not a single civilian has to die. But Hamas is preventing them from leaving, keeping them in the areas of conflict. So I think that you should direct your questions to Hamas. But I can tell you one thing. We're going out of our way to prevent civilian casualties.
And Ellison, you did a very eloquent job of lining out the different arguments right now about whether or not it appears that the IDF says that Hamas was not just there, but sort of embedded in this space. But of course, the Israeli government knowing that still there could be civilian lives at risk here. So how does this balance get struck? Or is that really the great open-ended question right now?
Yeah, I think that's the question we're seeing the world ask, right? I mean, at one point in one of the interviews I saw tonight, either on BBC or CNN, an IDF spokesperson was pressed on this idea of saying, OK, but you knew there were civilians, a lot of civilians still in Jabalia. And the rebuttal from the IDF spokesperson again and again was just that is Hamas's fault if civilians were injured there, that Hamas shouldn't be working and operating in areas where civilians are, and that Israel has repeatedly told civilians to head south. But another bit of this that is very true and is a question, I think, probably also to Israel as well as the international community, Egypt and beyond, is that there has been no option, no opportunity for civilians to leave Gaza, even if they wanted to. A UN humanitarian coordinator for Gaza had pointed that out a few days ago and said basically an advanced warning for a military action does no good for people if they don't have anywhere to go, if they don't feel like the roads to get to these tiny pockets of humanitarian corridors are going to be safe, and also if they have no guarantees that they can come home. They're being given an impossible choice, and people aren't sure they're going to be safe because that humanitarian area in the south, too, that the IDF talks a lot about, Al-Mawasi is the city near the ocean that they say is a humanitarian corridor in the area of Khan Yunis. That has been that area, Khan Yunis. We have seen strikes on residential areas many times, most recently this past weekend where a residential building collapsed. So a lot of Gazans are looking at all of this and saying, what do you mean there's a safe place for us to go to? The south isn't safe, and getting there anyway, that's not safe to begin with either. You know we're here. Over 2.2 million people live inside of Gaza, and we are talking about an area that is about the size of Philadelphia. So where on earth do they go? The Rafa crossing, that's not open for refugees. In Ukraine, when I was covering that war, we quickly saw Poland and other countries open up their borders to allow people, civilians fleeing war, to come out. That has not happened here. Sam?
In essence, that they're trapped. Ellison Barber with some critical reporting from the ground there at the border. Thank you so much, Ellison. And as she mentioned a second ago, the border now with Egypt, the Rafa border. Now to that border, where there is some hope tonight that it might be open. Not open just for aid, though, as we've seen already, but as soon as tomorrow for civilians injured in Gaza and desperately seeking medical treatment right now. NBC News correspondent Hala Garani joins us from Tel Aviv with much more. And Hala, let's start with that Rafa border crossing. What is the latest right now, to your knowledge, on getting it open? And if it does go open beyond just providing aid, what is the threshold for who is allowed to come into Egypt to seek medical aid?
Well, we're hearing reports that perhaps wounded and injured Gazans and patients who are being treated in hospitals that are suffering from acute shortages of fuel might be let out, though that's not confirmed. We are seeing images at the Rafa border on the Egyptian side of ambulances lined up, as well as trucks waiting to go in. We know that every day a few dozen trucks have been allowed in with essential supplies, water, medicine, but no fuel. And that's been a big issue for hospitals inside of the Gaza territory. Just one note here. We're hearing from the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who has tweeted in the last few minutes, I spoke with the Israeli President, Isaac Herzog, on efforts to safeguard U.S. citizens and bring hostages home. Of course, there are still very much negotiations ongoing. I've been speaking for the last few weeks to a Qatari source close to the talks, who's assured me every day that despite the increased Israeli military activity, that there are still discussions ongoing. And in fact, Hamas, the Qassam Brigade spokesperson, has said that there is the intention on their end to release some foreign, therefore not Israeli, foreign, perhaps dual national hostages in Gaza. And so there is that expectation and that hope as well. So with all of these different strands of information, of announcements coming from different sources, there is hope that in the next few days that there could be some sort of effort to either transfer injured people outside of Gaza, to allow dual nationals outside of Gaza on the Egyptian side, and perhaps even to see a hostage release. But this is all, of course, against the backdrop of absolutely devastating civilian death and infrastructure destruction that Ellison was describing there, especially what we saw tonight with the Jabalia refugee camp. Egypt, of course, controls the Rafah crossing. It has a very complicated relationship with Hamas. Hamas, as many of our viewers know, is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood that was created in the 1980s, and the regime, the government of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Hosni Mubarak before him have had very tense, adversarial, in some cases, historic relationships with the Muslim Brotherhood. Why would Egypt not want, for instance, to accept millions, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Gaza? Because the view of Egypt is, look, the Gazan problem is not an Egyptian problem. This is for Israel to solve. Historically, when Palestinians have been driven from their homes, they have not been allowed to return. And this is one of the reasons why Egypt is not ready to accept large numbers of Gazans to come out of the Gaza Strip and establish any kind of foothold in the Sinai on the Egyptian side of the border.
Hala, you provided some amazing historical perspective there. I'm wondering, present day now, can you give us more of sort of the big picture? Talk about Egypt as an intermediary in all these kinds of situations. How has the Egyptian government, for example, been involved with the humanitarian situation in Gaza right now?
Well, right now, it, of course, as I mentioned, there is in charge of the Rafah border crossing. It is, along with Qatar, it's important to note, one of the negotiating partners in the talks to release these hostages. And it was in this, there were a couple of hostages that were released after the first two, that mother and daughter pair, that Egypt was very much involved in negotiating. But again, it has a very close security relationship with Israel. It has a peace deal that was signed in the 70s with Israel. It has kept that Rafah border crossing sealed when it has wanted it to be sealed. So present day, it does have some leverage over that border, but it has not been ready and willing to allow a large flow of people, for instance, to come out. Of course, on the Gazan side of the border, then you also have the issue with Hamas, in some cases, perhaps not making it as easy as they could for people to cross, to reach the border and to cross it eventually as well, Sam. So it's a very complicated sort of puzzle there to put together with the competing interests and influences. But Egypt certainly has a lot of power on that side of the border and on the Rafah border crossing itself. Back to you.
They sure do. A deeply complicated dynamic there. Hala Garani for us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much, and stay safe, Hala. An Iranian-backed group in Yemen has claimed to have fired a number of missiles at Israeli targets today. Now, the Israeli military says at least one of those missiles was intercepted by its air defense system. Spokesperson for that Iranian-backed group posted on X that they will, quote, continue to carry out missile and drone attacks until Israel ends its attacks on Gaza. NBC's Courtney Cuby, who covers national security for us, has the very latest.
Sam, earlier today, militants in Yemen, believed to be Houthi rebels, fired a medium-range missile from Yemen towards Israel, according to 2 U.S. officials. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that they shot down a surface-to-surface missile with their Arrow defense system. Now, that's a missile defense system that they actually have not used in several years. They did confirm earlier today, though, in fact, they used it to shoot down this missile. Now, this, according to these U.S. officials, the missile had a range of 2,000 kilometers or more. Now, viewers may remember that just last week, a number of land attack cruise missiles, also with a similar range, were also fired from northern Yemen towards Israel. In that case, a U.S. Navy ship that was in the northern Red Sea actually intercepted at least 4 of those missiles, shooting them down. The U.S. Navy ship, the USS Carney, also took down a number of drones, also believed to have been fired by the Houthis towards Israel. Now, the U.S. officials said that at no time was the Carney or any other U.S. Navy ships in the region, at no time were they under any kind of a threat from this missile. It also flew over Saudi Arabia at certain times, and there is a U.S. military presence in Saudi Arabia. The officials saying that, in fact, the U.S. was not at threat. The U.S. personnel on the ground were not under any threat during the transiting of this missile. But the real concern here, according to these officials, is the fact that the Houthis do seem to have more range than was previously known, if in fact they can fire a missile all the way from Yemen to Israel. In addition to that, it's the fact that they are seem to be trying to hit Israel. Most of the time, the attacks that we have seen from them historically over the last several years have really focused more on Saudi Arabia in the past. Sam?
A lot to process there. Courtney, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere, because we have a lot more developments to get to tonight, including new information from Maine, where some troubling warning signs about the gunman in the mass shooting last week continue to emerge. Plus, this Halloween is so scary cold in some parts of the country. We'll tell you just how bone-chilling it's going to get in the forecast. And welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines right now that we're watching tonight, starting in England, where police there are investigating the death of a former American hockey player, Adam Johnson, who died after his neck was cut by a skate blade during a game on Saturday. Following his death, all players in England will now be required to wear neck guards starting in 2024. The former airfield in New York is now being used as a migrant shelter despite some safety concerns. City officials says that Floyd Bennett Field is a flood zone, and the fire department flagged it as a fire trap. The shelter is expected to house up to 2,000 migrants. A jury sided with Tesla in a trial that alleged a defective driver assistant feature that led to a deadly crash in 2019. Tesla arguing it was human error that caused it. The jury ruled that the car did not have a manufacturing defect. Today, the Senate confirmed Jack Lew as the new U.S. ambassador to Israel. Lew, if that name sounds familiar, is a former Treasury secretary. This comes as the Congress right now is deeply divided on how to provide funding support to Israel. And NBC's Hoda Kotb spoke exclusively with the co-creators of Friends on the passing of Matthew Perry, who, of course, played beloved Chandler Bing. Here's some of what they said about the last time they spoke with him.
He was in a really good place, which is why this seems so unfair.
Perry died over the weekend of an apparent drowning. His official cause of death is still under investigation. He was 54 years old. Well, now to the wildfires that are forcing evacuations in Southern California. For the very latest, the flames are being fueled by gusty winds with an area that burned now more than 2,000 acres just southeast of Los Angeles in Riverside County. At least 3 buildings have been destroyed. More than 1,000 homes remain under threat. Firefighters have yet to contain the flames. Right now, we bring in NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz live from Los Angeles. Liz, please let us know where things stand right now in terms of the containment. Do we have a figure at the moment?
Hey, Sam. Yeah, as of right now, this fire remains 0% contained. CAL FIRE gave an update this morning saying the fire exploded overnight in size. It doubled in size, reaching 2,200 acres. And again, 0% contained. 4,000 people are evacuated right now. And we've heard from people who say they had just minutes to flee the flames. One man was saying he was able to go back to his property today, and he found that his son's home was destroyed, his business was destroyed, and 12 of his prized cars have been destroyed. And Sam, as you mentioned, the big thing here and the biggest challenge has been the wind. They have been dealing with wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour. It's these dry Santa Ana winds, and there is a red flag warning in effect in parts of Southern California right now. And what that means is low humidity, high heat, and strong winds. Those are those conditions that are ripe and perfect for fire to spread. Sam.
Yeah, the words, Liz, Santa Ana winds strike terror, rightfully so, into the hearts of people who live in Southern California. You know, also, October is typically, Liz, the end of wildfire season. Are we seeing an indication that this is bucking the trend, or where does this sort of rate in terms of just the typical volume and frequency of wildfires?
Yeah, I mean, you know this from reporting in California. In recent years, especially, people have sort of said, all year round is fire season now. Traditionally, this might be the end of fire season, but in the past several years, some of the worst fires in California have happened in late fall. The Camp Fire, for instance, the deadliest fire in state history, happened in early November. This year has been pretty good so far. It's been a pretty quiet year for fires, knock on wood. A lot of CAL FIRE firefighters I've talked to have been pretty hopeful, but seeing this fire, these red flag warning conditions right now in late October is just a reminder that the state is certainly not out of the woods yet. Sam.
Yeah, excellent point on the Camp Fire, and it is a new normal. There's no doubt about it. Liz, thank you so much. Meanwhile, on the other coastline, it's an atypical chill that's greeting people this Halloween. About 70 million right now are under frost and freeze alerts. Some cities are hitting record lows for this time of the year. Now, parts of the Midwest even got a little bit of snow. I know my mom in Chicago also experienced some of that. NBC's Michelle Grossman has more.
Hey there, Sam. Great to see you. Yes, we saw snow in some parts today, and we're going to see more snow tomorrow morning as well. We're looking at really cold temperatures feeling like below freezing as we go throughout the evening tonight. That's prompting some frost and freeze alerts. We do have freeze warnings. That's in the hot pink color from portions of the mid-Atlantic down through the southeast, the Gulf Coast states, and the south central states. Dallas, you have a freeze warning. Also freeze watches. That's where you see the purple. 77 million people impacted, and we're seeing temperatures very cold tonight. We're also looking at really gusty winds. We had winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour. It's coming from the northwest, straight from Canada. That is a cold direction. So we're looking at winds gusting anywhere from 20 up to 35 miles per hour. That's making it feel colder than it actually is. That will be the case tomorrow as well. It's also prompting that snow. It's setting the stage for some snow. So you have that cold air in place, you have that wind direction, and it's going over those warm lake waters, and that's why we're seeing this precipitation. We saw some really heavy snow bands today, reducing visibilities downwind of the Great Lakes. We're going to see that once again. Where you see this swirl here, that blue, that is where the snow is falling. Looking a little mixed precipitation too. That's where you see the pink and also a little bit of rain in those warmer spots. But it's going to be a chilly end to October. It's going to be a chilly start too. We're looking at November 1st. Expected overnight lows today, many records. Where you see these blue dots, that's where we're expecting those records. So many of them, and this is why we're looking at temperatures into the 20s. You factor in the winds tomorrow morning as the kids are standing at the bus stop, getting to work. We're looking at wind chills in the teens in some spots. It's going to feel like 15 in Oklahoma City tomorrow morning, feeling like 20 in St. Louis. We'll feel like the teens also in Chicago. The air temperature only 27 degrees tomorrow in Chicago. Temperatures not going very far. We're anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. So we're going to be into the 40s in Cincinnati, St. Louis, Kansas City. Tulsa, you'll be at 50 degrees. We're going to be cool too in portions of the mid-Atlantic. Yesterday they were at 80 degrees. Took a huge dive today. Still going to be cool tomorrow at 53. That's 10 degrees below what is average for this time of year. But we're looking at a comeback as we go throughout the rest of the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, notice back into the 50s in Chicago, back into the upper 50s near 60 in Cleveland. We're back into the mid 60s in St. Louis, and looking good in New York City by Friday and Saturday. Saturday, we're going to be at 61 degrees. So I do want to talk about this. We do have some lingering showers tomorrow. We have a little disturbance off the coast here in the mid-Atlantic, and that's why we're going to see more snow downwind of the Great Lakes. That's going to interact with that cold air in place, and also in portions of northern New England. again, those northerly winds are really going to reinforce some cold air. And we'll end it here. 20 million people at risk for fire danger. We have really dry air in place, gusty winds, and also dry vegetation. That's going to be fuel for some fires. And we're going to be watching throughout the Gulf Coast states. Where you see the red here, that is a red flag warning. Happy Halloween, Sam.
Oh, and back to you, Michelle. Thank you so much. It might have been a chilly forecast, but always with some warmth. We appreciate that. Coming up next, former President Trump was known for blocking his critics on social media, but now the Supreme Court is deciding if public figures can be sued over doing that. But first, you gotta see this. A Florida man, need I say more, was rescued after his small plane crashed in the Everglades. You're seeing him sitting right there on the half-submerged plane wing, waiting for help, which luckily did arrive in time after about 8 hours following that crash. It's when a Miami-Dade fire rescue helicopter team was finally able to rescue him, take him out of the water. It's still unclear how the plane crashed in the first place. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. We start with a former Major League Baseball player, Daniel Serafini, who's making his first court appearance since being accused of killing his father-in-law. He pleaded not guilty to murder and attempted murder charges. Court documents say back in 2021, Serafini waited for his wife's parents to come home before shooting them both. His father-in-law died at the scene. His mother-in-law survived, but ultimately took her own life earlier this year. The case went cold until this month for years, when Serafini was extradited from Nevada to California to now face charges. In a turn on the diamond that's showcasing the best of what sports can do, a college student will leave quite the footprints on this year's World Series. That's because she just designed a pair of baseball cleats that are going to be used in one of the games. You see them right there with the snake on it, if that's a giveaway. Kenna Retu is a graphic design student at Arizona State University, so the Diamondbacks. She was commissioned to design a pair of kicks for a player on the Diamondbacks, but they did not specify which one it was. We'll have to pay attention. We have an unusual police chase to tell you about in Sacramento. So unusual that officers seemed kind of reluctant to even call it a pursuit.
There's another guy driving a forklift that's blacked out in the roadway. Yeah, he's clearly not going to stop. So I guess we'll just call it a pursuit. I'm going about 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, not that fast, not that far you can make it, I should say, with 10-mile-an-hour speed rate. The low-speed pursuit began just after midnight last night. 6 patrol cars got involved after the suspect plowed through a chain-link fence and then onto a bike trail. He was eventually arrested, but no word yet on how he got access to the forklift in the first place. Taking a more serious turn now, Maui police have just released body camera footage taken the day that wildfires ripped through the Hawaiian town of Lahaina. This was, of course, back in August. With that chaotic scene unfolding over a couple of hours as crews race to save lives, NBC's Miguel Almaguer takes a closer look at some of that footage. And we do want to warn you, it can be difficult to watch.
Jesus! You gotta go!
The heart-pounding video captures the scramble to escape the flames and the race to save lives.
Come out, come out, come out.
As wildfires tore through Lahaina, Maui police rescued 15 people trapped inside a coffee shop on famed Front Street, while thick smoke choked the air and the inferno closed in.
Come on, everybody out, everybody out, everybody out.
The harrowing scene unfolding August 8th. This our first perspective from police who selected the 16 minutes of video from 20 hours of footage.
To say that the Maui Police Department did not do their due diligence to save lives is false.
Get the out of the way!
First facing flames at 6 in the morning.
There's a fire. Is there anybody else in here?
Police scrambled to break open locked gates on dirt roads to create escape routes and rushed to evacuate residents.
This is not important. We're trying to get everybody out of country.
As the blaze erupted through the night, one officer loads a burn victim into his car, realizing he's badly in need of help.
Maybe I'll just take you straight to the hospital.
With 99 believed dead and 2,000 structures destroyed,
We have 5 minutes to get out of here.
these 16 minutes of hell are for many a lifetime of pain.
Authorities in Maui still have not named a cause for the fire, as downed power lines remain a focus of the investigation. Back to you.
And Miguel, thank you so much for that report. Well, tonight there are new details about concerns surrounding the gunman who police say killed 18 people in Maine last week. The gun store that refused to sell him a silencer did not alert authorities that someone with mental health issues attempted to even buy one. And it turns out that both his family and members of the military had raised red flags well before the shooting. NBC's Emily Aketa has full details.
Tonight, new details on apparent warning signs about the suspect months before the mass shooting. According to records from the county sheriff, Robert Card's son and ex-wife contacted them on May 3rd, saying they were concerned about his access to firearms because he was hearing voices or starting to experience paranoia. A deputy reached out to Card's Army Reserve unit, who said they would figure out options to get Robert help. In July, he spent 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility. Then in September, the Army Reserve asked for a wellness check on Card after he threatened to shoot up their facility. A sergeant was so concerned, he said he thought Card could snap and commit a mass shooting. A sheriff's deputy went to Card's home twice, but was unable to make contact. A statewide attempt to locate alert was issued. That statewide alert was lifted 1 week before 18 people were killed. They attempted to do 2 wellness checks, but never actually connected with him. Should there have been more?
Oh, gosh, follow up until it's done. He wanted to kill somebody.
Among the victims, Jim Lapowitz's son-in-law, Josh Seal.
This weekend, I was blowing the leaves on my yard, and many times I just stop and break down because this could have been prevented.
The Army says they determined Card should not have a weapon or handle ammunition, while records from the sheriff's office show Card's family said they would work to secure his personal guns. At least 3 guns have been recovered as part of the investigation, all obtained by Card legally. Maine's governor called for action on Monday, but wouldn't say whether law enforcement's response was adequate.
We want to get at the best answer to how can we prevent something like this from happening, and that includes why did it happen in the first place.
Newly released court documents reveal Card's sister identified him to police the night of the shooting, and that family told investigators he'd been struggling since a bad breakup earlier in the year with someone he originally met at a cornhole competition at the bar where the shooting occurred.
Yeah, so many questions that remain unanswered there. Emily Aketa reporting. Thanks, Emily. We move now to the latest with former President Trump and a case that involves him notoriously blocking his critics on Twitter. But today, in a Halloween hearing, the Supreme Court weighed in on whether doing so is legal. Now, to be clear, the court did not hear a case involving Trump specifically. Instead, they heard arguments in 2 cases involving school board members in California and another with a city manager in Michigan. But the legal question remains the same, which is, can public officials block people based on their viewpoints? NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Sanadella joining us with more on this. Angela, let's start big picture first. Talk about the 2 cases that are right now in front of the Supreme Court, and why is former President Trump looming so large in this conversation?
Yeah, so both of these cases involve what you just said, which is whether or not a public official can block followers on social media. And to people like you or I, or to most of the watchers, it seems like this is our right to block whoever we want. It is our private conversations. But the question at hand is, if it's a government official, does that mean it's a public forum? Does it mean it's state action? Does it then mean that if they block people, it turns into government censorship? Now, both of these cases are slightly different, and the lower court had different outcomes. So with the school board members, they didn't even come up with these social media accounts. They didn't develop them until they were running their campaigns. And there, the lower court decided that this was public discourse, thus they could not block anybody. Now, with the city manager, it was a little bit different. He also had pictures of his babies on there. It was a family account. It was a personal account. In there was sprinkled some public discourse. So the lower courts there argued this was personal, and thus he can block whoever he wants. But as you said, yes, Trump looms large because of what we saw last year. We saw 2 years ago. This case was in front of a New York federal appeals court involving Trump.
And I do want to ask you about that, Angela. And also, it's just so interesting to hear you say this, because it seems like the accounts can sort of evolve over time, right? It's not necessarily where the social media account begins, but what it's ultimately used for. Now, I would say Trump was sued, like you mentioned, for this very reason while he was serving in the White House. Justice Kagan mentioned him today, too. Take a listen.
I don't think a citizen would be able to really understand the Trump presidency, if you will, without any access to all the things that the president said on that account. It was an important part of how he wielded his authority. And to cut a citizen off from that is to cut a citizen off from part of the way that government works.
So to the justice's point here, Angela, I mean, Trump's Twitter account at the time was used ubiquitously for policies, for musings, for anything. How is that relevant here? What happened with that case?
So it's very relevant because he was the president of the United States, and Kagan there actually said, thus, this was public discourse. This was the public's right to also access their own president, and that's the question at play. So what happened with Trump's case was that once he was no longer in office, then the Supreme Court essentially vacated that decision because it was no longer relevant. He was not a public figure. However, as everyone is putting it together, it is not a coincidence. The Supreme Court is now considering the exact same issues, but at lower levels with local politicians, because this way it becomes less politically divisive if they come up with a decision that will 100% affect Trump should he take that office again, and should 100% apply to whether or not he uses social media again in that manner if he becomes president. So the ramifications are massive to Trump, even though we're just talking about school board officials and a city manager here, Sam.
Yeah, there is a lot at stake, and it'll be interesting to see if this is done on a case-by-case basis or sort of where the gray areas are. Angela Senadella, thank you so much for that insight. We appreciate it. Well, coming up next, as the war rages on in Israel, many are calling for a two-state solution. This is nothing new. There have been conversations for decades. But what does that really mean? We'll take a closer look when we come back. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look right now around the world, starting in Mexico, where Hurricane Otis has now left nearly 100 people dead or missing. Food and water shortages are widespread, and many people are still without electricity more than a week later. The damage from the storm could cost up to $15 billion. In Japan, an 86-year-old man has been arrested after taking two women hostage at gunpoint at a post office near Tokyo. Neither of the hostages, who were both postal workers, were injured, thankfully. After more than 8 hours, police finally broke into the post office, arrested the man, and seized his weapon. Ukrainian officials say that Russia is building up its forces in eastern Ukraine near the city of Bakhmut. Ukrainian military commanders say that Russian troops seem to be moving from defensive to active positions, what could be an attempt to regain lost ground there. And a former British cyber espionage worker will spend life in prison for attempted murder for stabbing an American intelligence worker. Joshua Bowles attacked the woman as she was leaving a gym in England. That happened back in March. Investigators described the attack as, quote, politically motivated, and that Bowles was angry and resentful of his former agency's work. Well, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak held a call with Benjamin Netanyahu today. The two focusing on minimizing civilian casualties and, quote, the long-term goal of a two-state solution. But what would a successful two-state solution even look like? NBC's Noah Pransky has more.
America's answer to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been pretty consistent over the years.
A viable two-state solution is the only way this conflict can end.
I like two-state solution.
We cannot give up on a two-state solution.
So what exactly is the two-state solution? It's a Palestinian state and an Israeli state coexisting side by side.
The two-state solution is the dream and almost the fantasy of those who actually want peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
The reasons that fantasy has been so elusive, the two sides have never agreed on exact boundaries, control over the holy city of Jerusalem, or the exact rules governing a peaceful coexistence. The original two-state plan was proposed by the UN back in 1947. Jews agreed to the plan. Palestinians, unwilling to leave land they considered theirs, did not.
Israel had taken its place among the nations of the world.
And after Israel declared independence in 1948, peace lasted exactly 1 day before Arab countries declared war. Over the next 75 years of on-again, off-again fighting, there have been multiple U.S. attempts to broker peace, coming closest in 1993. It was known as the Oslo Accords. Leaders from Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization agreed to the basics of a new peaceful two-state solution. But before a deal was finalized,
sad word that apparently an assassin has claimed another world leader.
An Israeli extremist who opposed a Palestinian state assassinated Israel's Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Afterward, violence flared up, and Israel turned to a new leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, who initially refused to honor the agreement.
You started to see a reversal
of progress, or just very slow progress overall involving the two-state solution.
During that time, Hamas rose to power in Gaza, and it kept growing stronger as Israel flexed its muscle with a military blockade. Netanyahu would pledge to never allow a Palestinian state in 2015, though he'd waver in the years a bit on that pledge, and he helped push new Jewish settlements deeper and deeper into the West Bank, an action considered illegal by much of the international community. So, is the two-state solution dead?
We're probably further away than ever right now, literally further away than ever, because Hamas doesn't want peace with Israel, as simple as that. And Israel's quite happy to have that situation on its border, because they also don't really want a two-state solution. They would also like to take over the whole area.
But if you want to grasp at some hope for peace, the international community is getting more involved than it ever has in recent years.
That movement alone, based on principles of protecting innocent lives, that is what's going to achieve peace in the future.
Noah Pransky, NBC News.
Time now for the future of everything, and by everything we mean everything. It would not be Halloween, of course, without talking about some candy. We're going to get into all of that in just a minute. But first to X. Its value is now less than half of what Elon Musk paid for it. And that was only about a year ago. According to several reports, employees were given stock grants in the company, formerly known as Twitter, at a valuation of $19 billion, or $45 per share. That is a 55% drop from the purchase price of $44 billion. And in New Mexico, AI helped to catch a man accused of filming people in a Walmart bathroom. One employee confronted the man and took a video of him, but then he ran away into the parking lot. Well, police uploaded that video to AI software to put together a list of possible matches, and lo and behold, they tracked him down. And now, truly, for my favorite kind of future of everything, candy. This Halloween season is all about the treats. I mean, when is it not? And we all love the classics and Skittles and M&Ms, but some new candies are now hitting the store shelves this year. NBC News Now anchor and chief candy correspondent, although I would like that title, I'm not going to lie, Joe Fryer digs into some unexpected trends in the world of sweets.
For many, Halloween is like a saccharine scavenger hunt.
Sadly, as you can see, my trick-or-treat bucket is empty right now, but we are going to fix that starting at Dylan's Candy Bar.
Here, they're selling the Dylan Dares You Tackle Box, capitalizing on the food challenge trend.
I feel like I'm gonna die. I know.
With their creepy collection of confections.
What are some of the things that people might be a little, what is that?
Everything.
Dylan Lawrence says it's like a game. Just spin the wheel. Small one on the package or the big one in the store.
Ah, it's one of the best and grossest.
Yeah, I got chicken feet gummies.
What does that taste? It's not horrible.
It's not horrible.
It's not horrible.
But that's
this is not bad.
But Dylan would not let me get away that easily, so I sampled a sour candy called Toxic Waste.
Yes, I think my tongue wants to leave my mouth now.
A hard candy that tastes like sour cream and onion.
You like it? Make you like it.
No, I don't. I do not like this one.
And this salty starfish made of black licorice. It's the candy equivalent of a horror movie.
This brings you joy, doesn't it?
I love it.
Okay, we've stocked up on some daring sweets. Let's see what other trendy candy we can find inside its sugar.
Here you can eat like an astronaut with candy that's freeze-dried. These are peach rings that are clearly crunchy, not gummy.
You can really taste the peach. It's like a super strong peach flavor.
They also freeze-dried Skittles, Starburst, and gummy worms.
That is super flavorful, too. That's like really fruity. What does this do to the flavors?
You take the moisture out of it, it really makes the flavors more intensified.
These days, the freeze-dried candy trend is especially popular on social media.
Nerd gummies, the crunch.
Perhaps such goodies will make it into trick-or-treat buckets, with candy spending expected to reach $3.6 billion this Halloween, up from $3.1 billion last year. I still have room in my bucket and some unfinished business, which takes me to Bon Bon, and the man in the top hat known as Mr. Licorice.
I have to admit, I had a not-so-positive black licorice experience earlier today. What do you think when you hear that?
I see it as a challenge. It's something I hear daily.
In Sweden, black licorice is huge. Well, in America, it's more divisive. Leo Schwartz wants to change that by easing me in with gateway licorice that's heavy on chocolate.
Very good. I like the chocolate. And I can taste a little of the licorice, right?
Little hint.
Gradually, I build up.
It tastes salty, but it's not bothering me.
To a black Swedish fish.
I taste the salt. I do taste that black licorice, which isn't my favorite, but it's not like bothering me. I don't want to spit it out. My God, I'm another convert.
I learned mixing black licorice with other sweets makes it less scary, ensuring your treat is no trick.
It's Halloween. We have a little bit of Halloween joy to share with you right now. From the show's normal anchor, Gadi Schwartz. He's now a dad of 2. He's out on paternity leave. I want to show you a quick clip. Check this out. I would say it's the crouching for me, but I also think it's the hair for me. I'm still undecided on that. That is Gadi doing his best The Rock impersonation from Moana. Now, the most interesting part of this, perhaps, is his daughter, Kira. Look at her reaction the entire time. She's super confused. And the question is, because she knows it's her dad? Or is it because this guy is scaring me and whatever you're doing, please stop doing it? I'm not sure. We're going to find out about that as well. But they are dressed as Moana and Maui from Disney's Moana. He is Dad of the Year. No doubt about it. Wherever you're watching from right now, Gadi, and I can only hope that you are, we should all take lessons from you on just like how to just love life and your family so much. That was awesome. That is going to do it for us tonight. I'm Sam Brock. We will see you tomorrow without a costume. But until then, stay tuned. Have a great evening.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.